How's it going, Mets and overall baseball fans? It's your boy Wardy, and we're back at it with the latest news topic to get into. Apologies in advance if we have any choppy audio. I've been having audio issues to start my day, unfortunately, but the show must go on. So again, apologies in advance. But the latest reports come out from Ken Rosenthal and Will Sammon of The Athletic over the past 24 hours that have them connecting the Mets and David Stearns once more. So who exactly is David Stearns? For those that haven't seen my content over the past couple of years, as we've talked about this guy tirelessly at this point, what would he bring as potential president of baseball operations? How likely is he to land in Queens? Well, now he's more likely than ever based on recent reports, and so much more that we're about to deep dive, which is vital for the Mets and their future. But before we do all of that, thank you guys so much for that like and subscribe button as always, and of course have to let you all know about today's video sponsor. Thank you to Pristine Auction for sponsoring today's video. If you don't know about PristineAuction.com, they're the most trusted sports memorabilia and collectibles auction site, which is great for my loyal audience here in WardyNYM that love their memorabilia. And auctions on PristineAuction.com start at just $1, and each day there are over thousands of autographed items available, so you win signed authentic signatures at affordable prices. Affordable deals are happening all the time on PristineAuction.com. They have just about every player you could want, so if you want old school or new school, they've got you. Every item on PristineAuction.com comes with a certificate of authenticity from the industry's most reputable authenticators. So upgrade your collection of signed memorabilia today and get $10 off your first item one when you use code WARDY. Be sure to sign up now because there are deals ending every day, and links are in the description down below. Be sure to check them out. Once more, shout out to Pristine Auction, and make sure to check them out in the description down below today. But Mets fans, whoever you're a fan of, drop your initial comments and reactions down below on how are you feeling about David Stearns and this current connection. Now, David Stearns, for those who don't know, we'll do a quick background check on him. Everything that you need to know if, say, you're unfamiliar with his recent success at the MLB level as a higher exec, why he is so appealing to the Mets, and why the potential of the Mets landing him is so great. But let's get into initially where we currently are with David Stearns and where David Stearns is at with himself and his contract, because for those that don't know, and again, please make sure to check out the articles from The Athletic, not only Ken Rosenthal that initially broke this report, but Will Sammon, who did a phenomenal job breaking down everything you need to know about the current connection here and why it makes sense for both parties. But David Stearns, as you know, has his contract ending at the end of this season. So beginning August 1st, which was over a month ago, he was able to start negotiating and just having a preliminary discussions with other clubs on potentially seeking out them this offseason and landing somewhere else. You know, David Stearns is someone that Steve Cohen has highly coveted since becoming Mets owner, and has tried every single year for the past 3 years to get an interview with him as president of baseball operations, ownership, I can't even say his name right. Everyone involved there with the Brewers and their ownership. I was going to say Athanasiou, but I know that's not how you say his last name. That's Andres Athanasiou, a hockey player. If you know, you know. Regardless, ownership for Brewers has denied access to interview Stearns over the past couple of years, and that hasn't really sat right with the Mets, and I know it hasn't sat right with the Brewers, knowing that Stearns to the Mets has felt more inevitable year by year by year. But now David Stearns, who was our president of baseball operations from 2018 to 2021, and which 2022 up until the 2022 season, in which they, after the 2022 season, in which they had 4 consecutive playoff run years for an organization that prior only had 4 playoff runs in their entire existence as a franchise. So as a younger exec, one who did great with player development, player evaluation via trades, and gives him 4 straight years of playoff contention, that's impressive in itself. Fell short in 2022 by 1 game as they missed that final wildcard spot, went to the Phillies, that went all the way to the dance. And since then, David Stearns has sat back the past year as an advisor, stepped away from the president of baseball operations role for the Brewers. And if you're wondering why that is, it has to go in hand to a degree, I'd imagine, with this current connection with the Mets. This is a New York native, a guy that grew up a Mets fan, that we've seen a lot of connections as to why he can make sense to land in Queens. And now we see here that David Stearns has started discussions with the Mets, and they have apparently went down the road already. According to Andy Martino of SNY and others, has stated that Stearns and his negotiations, his discussions rather, with Steve Cohen and the Mets has already went far greater than how things went with Theo Epstein a couple years ago, famously known for his run in the mid-2010s with the Chicago Cubs, now currently works under Rob Manfred and MLB. So David Stearns is a guy that the Mets have had their eye on for a while now, and now with his contract up at the end of the year, he has started negotiations and just discussions with the Mets, in which they have went very well from everything that we've seen based on these recent reports. He's had discussions with the Astros because he started really his MLB front office career from 2012 to 2015 as an assistant GM for the Astros, and his wife is from Houston. I'm going to go on a limb and say he probably met her while he was working there during that time. So what is going to be the bigger priority? Is it potentially going to be going back to a consistent contender and the Astros already have the groundwork built, or is it a team that, while there's more obstacles involved, is a Steve Cohen ran Mets with more money than you could possibly imagine, and with a guy that's used to having a limited payroll there in Milwaukee and had great success in player development, player evaluation, the Christian Yelich trade most famous, in which he's having a bounce back year, which is huge for the Brewers and for Yelich. Among many other smaller moves since then, you'd have to wonder what is going to be more of an intrigue for someone like David Stearns. And I wholeheartedly believe in what many execs believe is that it's going to be with the Mets. Why? Because he checks off all the boxes that the Mets are really looking for. There's a reason why they've been so adamant about a president of baseball operations. If you're wondering why that is, the Mets have had disarray in their front office since the start. Since day one, Cohen has tried for a Pobo, has not been able to land him. This is easier said than done. Teams don't want to give up their higher execs. Color me surprised, right? So because of this reason, it hasn't been easy, and they've had a couple GMs. They've had the Jared Porters of the world. They've had why am I blanking on his name? The fill-in for Jared Porter that year, Zach Scott, who is an analytics guru, but not great as running as a GM. Billy Epler, who has had his struggles and also has had his success, like most recently at this past year's trade deadline, in which he did as good of a job as you could really hope for if you're in the Mets case, as a team that was selling and writing off their grizzled vets in the Verlanders, the Scherzers, etc. So they've had plenty of turmoil already, and Rome wasn't built overnight. We know this is a long game. Steve Cohen knows this is a long game. When asked about the type of hires he liked to do, he said, I do not want to bring someone in that's going to derail this team the next 5 to 10 years on trying to get immediate success while hurting the farm. In doing so, I will be patient and diligent and wait. And that's why so many execs out there, according to these reports, do believe that David Stearns is the perfect fit for the Mets, and that they've already had these discussions far greater than potentially what Stearns has had discussion-wise with other teams. We don't know that for certain, but you have to imagine, given this long-time connection, the guy grew up a Mets fan. He knows what it takes to win in New York. He knows what the market is like there. He knows how to handle a big market. You know, we've seen this before with, say, a Chaim Bloom, a guy who ran for Mets GM that job a couple years ago and lost to that being in Brody Van Wagenen under the Wilpons because they wanted a puppet there, and Chaim Bloom wasn't going to be that. Bloom goes from a great team in the Rays, great analytically involved and player development-wise, goes to the Red Sox, has plenty of success there, but also has struggled with certain trades, has struggled to give out the big dollar to guys that he felt are deserving of that. You know, we look at the Mookie Betts deal among many others that say haven't worked fully in the Red Sox favor. So there is always that concern with bringing a guy from a smaller market club and expecting him to handle big bucks with a different team. However, you look at what's happening here with David Stearns and the Brewers, and this is a relationship that seems like over time, and as Steve Cohen has gotten involved, it has just been more intriguing for David Stearns and going with the Mets than, say, staying with the Brewers here. And going from a small market team that had the amount of success that he did from the trade standpoint, from the consistent playoff caliber standpoint, to then head to Queens, where he can basically nitpick what he wants. The Mets just fired over 4 people in their player development staff in their front office. He would be able to come in and handpick who he wants there. Billy Epler would stay as GM. For people that may think otherwise, no, as of now, Billy Epler would stay as GM, which honestly, I don't hate the idea of. I know a lot of people hate Billy, but let's not forget he's made a lot of really strong moves for the Mets. He did great at the trade deadline. I think he's really strong with player scouting. I would like him in the organization if, say, it would not be GM, but recent reports again, sorry, I have a very itchy nose to start this morning. Between that and the audio, frustrating, but we're going to chug along. Point is that Billy Epler, while he's anything but perfect, having that middleman between him and Steve Cohen would be vital and give him a different perspective to hear from, that being Stearns. Stearns will be the guy to have the final say in decisions, and I think just the more smart baseball minds in that front office, the better, the merrier, and that is what David Stearns brings you. At the young age of 38, having the amount of success that he had with a small club is no easy task. Now transitioning that into Queens again, where he grew up, Manhattan, grew up a Mets fan, has plenty of his family around there too. This seems like a challenge that is just oodles amount of potential for him to handle, tackle, and overcome, the same way that we've seen Friedman do so good during his time with the Tampa Bay Rays and their front office, then shifting to the Dodgers, running town as their Pobo without a problem. For the most part, he's had great success there in LA, and many execs, according to these reports, believe there to be similar success to be had with David Stearns going from the Brewers to the Mets here. So let's not only talk about his playoff, having those consecutive playoff runs. You might be saying, Wardy, we get it that he's been in the playoffs 4 consecutive times when the Brewers only had 4 playoff runs in their history prior to that. But why is he appealing when he hasn't won anything? Well, who has won everything that is available, that's out there? Very little people. And the guys that are still around are guys that are has-beens that don't understand today's MLB. David Stearns is not only at a very impressive age with the success rate that he has had to this point, but more than anything, he understands newfound analytics. He understands the game of baseball today. He understands the balance. He understands what it's like to be on a limited payroll. So just imagine his true potential if he's, say, on a bigger one, the same way that Friedman has thrived in a different fashion with the Rays then going to a team like the big bad LA Dodgers. So there's a lot of appeal here if you're the Mets. Now let's get into the cons, why this potentially could still not happen. And there's a team that has stuck out over the past year plus has had interest in him, and that is his former team that he worked for in the Houston Astros. Again, 2012 to 2015, probably met his wife there because I believe she's from Houston. There's a lot of appeal to go back to a consistent competitor, a contender, a team that he can go into their Pobo slot right away. Dana Brown would stay as GM, I'd assume, for now, and they can have continued success. But is that really the challenge, the obstacle, rather, that David Stearns wants to deal with? Does he want that comfortability, or did he step away from the game of baseball pretty much for a year, aside from being an advisor, stepped away from running the show because he wants a new challenge? He knows that challenge is available, and they're a true opportunity in New York to be a Mets fan, like Steve Cohen growing up, to work for the Mets, to run the whole dance, to run the whole shenanigans, to run the whole effing thing, to nitpick who you want in your front office, to make the decisions, and potentially to be the first man to hand Steve Cohen a World Series championship. You know that there's appeal there, especially given that Mets fandom, and hopefully that Mets fandom, to an extent, helps carry the weight here and what the Mets are trying to build and land and reel in their guy potentially, and David Stearns. Again, nothing is a sure guarantee, but from everything that we've seen, the likelihood of David Stearns landing in Queens as our next president of baseball operations is far greater than that being the same case for many other available names out there, either in executive front office roles with opposing teams or currently a free agent, the way that Billy Epler was a free agent when the Mets initially hired him as a GM over a year ago. So Mets fans, baseball fans, whoever you're a fan of, I want to know your initial reactions and comments down below. How are you feeling about David Stearns, the potential of him landing as the next president of baseball operations? What do you like? What do you maybe not like about him? Are you sold on David Stearns the way that I honestly am? And at this rate, I will be pretty surprised if the Mets do not land him, given all these latest connections. Again, we've seen this time and time again with Correa, with Brian, with other people, even Theo Epstein to a degree, Billy Bean. People that you think are going to ultimately land in Queens and then they don't. And say you're wasn't familiar with the active reporting going on. Either way, David Stearns is someone that, between his age, his fandom, his great young mind, the success he's had at a smaller market level for consecutive years, and so much more. Because of all those reasons, I do wholeheartedly believe that he might be the best man for the job, or close to. And I think as each passing day goes on, as these talks have already happened between the Mets and Stearns, I think David is starting to realize that, if he hasn't already, himself too. So something to follow along, guys. This could be a situation where as soon as the offseason begins, we may find out that David Stearns is the next president of baseball operations for the Mets, and they can finally get the ground running on having a truly structured front office, something that they have yet to have at all so far in Steve Cohen's tenure as Mets owner. So again, guys, drop your thoughts down below. Also, shout out the Mets for a great win last night at the time of recording this, a dominant win over, again, a lesser Nationals club, but the Mets are lesser too. Jose Quintana going 7 strong, Mauricio with his first RBI, Alvey with a 3-run ding dong, Pete Alonso looking like he's going to be home run champ again, or is going to do his best bet to try and be that position again. He's been so hot lately. Beatty getting some hits. Vientos getting some hits. Everyone being productive. It's nice to see that core 4 prospects in Vientos, Mauricio, Beatty, and Alvarez all in the lab together, all back to back to back to back. I like that. More of that, please. Sign me up. Mets fans, let me know your thoughts down below. And thank you again for your endless support. And stay tuned for great, consistent Mets content all season long, all off season long. This is a place to be. We got so much coming. So all I got to say is buckle up and stay ready, because we got ourselves a ride coming.